Okay, in the 2 hours that have been allotted to me, I would like to address the following 12 issues. It's really a pleasure to speak to this audience, wherever you are. And I will comment not on the internet per se, not on the future of the internet, but on this very, very interesting report that we have been given to see, and which I'd like to comment on. Now, I know the president of ISOC, Kathy Brown, probably longer than anybody in this room, and maybe even anybody on this video screen. This goes more than 30 years. And I consider her to be a real friend. And what does one owe a friend? One owes a friend a hug when they're down, a hand to get up, a pat on the back when they do well, but in particular, the greatest gift you can give is to give a friend constructive honesty. So let me try to comment. Why do organizations such as ISOC issue such reports, make the effort and the commitment and the investment in such a report? One of them is, frankly, probably as an exercise in inclusion. You have membership, we listen to the membership. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a fine effort, but you get a lot of an echo chamber in that kind of situation. Not to mention the methodological issues of who responds, who do you get to talk, who do you solicit, who do you listen to, but that's okay. Those are methodology issues, but inclusion as an exercise is useful. Secondly, to give direction to the future. Here's the problem. It becomes, in an organization with such many stakeholder groups, somewhat of a consensus document. It is staff written. It is to some extent a compromise, as you can imagine, and it kind of drips diplomacy. Maybe there are some important statements here, but if so, one must decode them carefully, which I'm not capable of. And everybody decodes them in their own way, which means basically we then have some kind of an ink blot test in which everybody reads their own fantasies and fears. But why engage in that? So there is very little that I disagree with. In fact, I agree with practically everything, but maybe you kind of have different perspectives and also agree with it. So I don't think it is pushing boundaries, however. I don't think it is necessary to poll 3,000 people and hundreds of experts to reach these kind of conclusions. Now, this is particularly true for the front part. There's very little that I disagree with. It's good, but hardly original. Now, that doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it unimportant. This is not a publishable type document in a sense of refereed original kind of research. It's kind of harmonizing, integrating, synthesizing ideas around there, but it doesn't really give all that much guidance. It gives you points that are out there. Artificial intelligence is important, and Internet of Things are important, and cybersecurity is important, and government intrusion is a problem, etc., etc. We know that. Now, in the process of bringing together all these stakeholders, all of them are very opinionated, have strong points of view, it is clear that a lot of uncomfortable stuff is left out. There's a lot of sacred cows that are left grazing out there. So, for example, while the fundamental economies of scale that pervade the internet and the report basically addresses us by saying, yeah, the people such as MySpace and Netscape, they used to have market power, but then somebody else came along. Okay, I'm not sure if that will solve the Google issue, but let's just assume that there's a dynamism, that the nature of the market dominant companies will change. That doesn't make it a competitive system. It just means, it could mean a system of serial monopolies or near monopolies or oligopolies. So the question, therefore, is not so much who has the market power, but rather is there something inherent about market power in this environment? That's a very important question for public policy and a variety of other economic and policy reasons, but it is not really addressed in this report. Also, there's the issue of employment. The employment issue is not only that people have to learn different skills, but rather individually, but there's also the macro aspect of deindustrialization of entire economies and countries. And clearly that has been an issue in America, as it is in other countries. And one of the reasons why we have this current president is precisely as the pushback against those deindustrializations. And that is also not really discussed. I would say some other sacred cows are taxation. If we're talking about digital divide, which is done here, if we're talking about inequality, which is done here, well, one way is to subsidize or to protect or to kind of reach out to those kind of under supplied communities, and for that you need money. Where do you get the money? Well, taxation is one form. Now we can reject it, but we cannot ignore it as a possibility and basically kind of keep it out there away from the discussion. Similarly, anonymization, okay, kind of again, one of the sacred cows, but we clearly have lots of societal problems that are due to that total anonymity that makes it possible for people to engage in all kinds of antisocial behavior without any particular repercussions. And that at least is an issue that needs to be put out on the table, and then we can conclude that it's still the lesser of the evils, but you cannot just simply ignore it. Lastly, so heresy too. Another issue is it possible that there would be superior technological solutions outside of the internet system, or in lowercase internets rather than in uppercase the internet? That certainly is an issue that kind of deserves a discussion. One of the kind of sacred beliefs of the internet environment is that kind of that there's one internet and thou shalt not have any other internets to worship, and so that has become a belief system with its saints and heretics to be burned at the stake with kind of dogmas. It's become actually from a technological solution a bit into a belief system. So given that, it is not surprising to me that the conclusions, again, unexceptional but timid. I'll just read you a few. The economy will change far faster than the rules governing it. Sure, so what are you going to do about it? What's the proposal? Where's the beef? Or the system we have in place to regulate business is stuck in the 20th century notion of how the economy works. Sure, totally agreed. I've said things like that myself. But the question is, so therefore what? Other than kind of wringing your hands over the fact that Moore's law may apply to the economy but not to government, you have to ask the question, is it possible to accelerate government processes? If so, how? And if not, or if at least less, what are some of the consequences that are inherent rather than just kind of decry it? Similarly, ethical consideration must be prioritized in the design and deployment of artificial intelligence, sure, but what does that precisely or concretely would mean? And I could go on with things like that. So I would say no disagreement here, but where's the beef? Now, the most so far I've been kind of a negative, I suppose, but in kind of lovingly, negative. But there's a real good stuff in here, which is particularly the what-if scenarios. The what-if scenarios are great. I really recommend them to you. The other stuff you know. But the what-if scenarios are really, really kind of creative and original, sometimes frightening, certainly challenging, and I recommend them for you to read. What I would then say, by the same logic, they're not being followed by anything. The what-ifs should be followed by and therefores. Okay, so just raising the question mark is a real good first step. But the next step after that is to say, and therefore we should consider ABC or not do 1, 2, 3 or whatever. So how to do this next time? Because clearly this is an evolution, it's a dynamism, it's a change. I would say the organization itself will find it hard to make recommendations of what to do with this or that issue. Coming up in 5 years, there are too many different perspectives, it takes too much time to formulate them. Instead, after a report like that, after introducing the issues and the problems, should just let a bunch of outside people make comments on it, comments in a sense of commissioned short essays, or you select from the outside already written stuff, or you excerpt something from somebody else, so that there will be perspectives there. And you don't have to endorse them. You don't have to kind of consider them to be the practical solution, but at least they push the discussion and the debate in a constructive way into the next generation. So my final evaluation, A for effort, A for tactful diplomacy and compromise, B for originality, B for pluralism, pluralism of opinions that are outside of the internet community, B- for courage, but an A+ for inspiring us to protect, preserve, and defend this extraordinary institution. Thank you.